Aloha and good afternoon. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you from eTurboNews in Honolulu, Hawaii. Today is Friday, July 9th. The time is 3:05 p.m. here in Honolulu, and I'm going to give you just a short update of some of the headlines on eTurboNews.com. If you wanted to read it, just simply go to eTurboNews.com, or if it's easier for you to remember, to travelnews.online, and you can read this and many other headlines and of course, more details from what I can tell you here. In Sydney, in Australia, area residents now must carry evidence showing their address and produce the evidence, if required to do so, by a police officers if they're at least 18 years old. The reason is COVID. Sydney is suffering with a new outbreak of the COVID Delta version, and precautions are now to restrict movement in the city to avoid a further spread. In Jamaica, the tourism minister and chair of the High-Level Organization of American States, OAS, working group, the Honorable Edmund Bartlett, is calling for continued exchange between member states and industry to finalize a practical and dynamic recovery action plan for the cruise and airline industry in the post-pandemic stage. Of course, for the Caribbean, for many of the Caribbean countries, tourism is the #1 industry, and it has been lacking. It is, of course, not a domestic destination for US travelers, and with this, there are certain restrictions in place for people traveling both back and forth between two countries. Jamaica's Minister of Tourism, who is also in charge of the Resilience Group, is always seen of thinking out of the box. So you should read this article. It's interesting, and it's an attempt for the Caribbean to work together on finding a solution in the future for post-COVID activities in tourism. Started yesterday, domestic travelers coming to Hawaii can now enter the state and bypass the COVID-19 testing and quarantine at arrival if they have a CDC-issued vaccination pass to authenticate they have been fully vaccinated. This was announced at a press conference at the airport 2 days ago. I attended this press conference and asked about international travelers. Unfortunately, Hawaii is only accepting domestically issued CDC-issued vaccination passes for anyone who wants to come into the state and avoid the otherwise 10-day quarantine required. This is also true for anyone else who is not vaccinated and who can enter the state of Hawaii with a PCR test, and this has to be done within 72 hours of boarding a flight to the state. Regardless, tourism has been extremely busy in Hawaii. Arrival numbers are almost more than what was in 2019. And considering that international travelers are not yet allowed to come to Hawaii, so you don't see Canadians, you don't see Japanese, Koreans, Australians, or Chinese, it is amazing how many new markets opened for domestic tourism to the state. So the talk here is not about how to get more tourists to come here, it's how to get rid of some tourists and make it difficult actually to stay in Hawaii, and in raising rates, for example, for state park entries, and many other discussions on how to reduce tourism. In Holland, the Dutch Prime Minister said the country's hospitality and nightlife sector needed to be shut down due to a rise in cases of the more infectious Delta variant of the virus until August 14th. Lufthansa has a new IT solution that enables companies to integrate sustainable offers for customers into their portfolio and into their product portfolio. The platform supports achieving CO2 reduction targets and accelerations the transition to sustainable mobility. Companies can simply integrate this interface into their own online portals. Customers are increasingly demanding sustainable and mobility offers. At At the same time, companies are also looking for ways to achieve their sustainable goals. The Lufthansa Innovation Hub now addresses these growing demands with a new solution. This solution, called SQUIC, the Lufthansa Group Central Digitalization, launched a CO2 compensation platform aimed at companies from the entire travel, mobility, and transport industry. By using an application programming interface, API, companies can now easily calculate and offset the CO2 emission of the services they're using or they have been offered to them. The new solution permits them to develop individual sustainable products that are tailored to the needs of their customers. The International Air Transport Association, known as IATA, is launching a Mobility Aid Action Group, what will examine and improve the transport journey of mobility aids, including wheelchairs, with the objectives of improving the handling of the vital equipment for travelers with disabilities. The World Tourism Network relaunched the Safer Tourism Seal. You can find more information on safertourismseal.com. This program was discontinued 6-7 months ago to allow COVID to kind of develop in a way that tourism and travel could be encouraged away. At the same time, we understand the WTTC, the World Travel and Tourism Council, did continue their program in full force, but WTN thought it's a little bit too early. And now with the relaunch, it's a positive sign. It's a simple and effective and unique. It's not based on any type of evaluation. WTN wouldn't come to your destination or to your hotel and check. They're also not long forms to fill out. It's more based on your self-assessment, but it has certain requirements in place for anyone in a destination to apply. And there are records that are publicly available. One, there are 3 different levels of the seal. The green Safer Tourism Seal is available to destinations and stakeholders. It's strictly based on your own assessment, and 4 of the following minimum requirements need to be filled. Number 1, the 25% vaccination rate in your region. Number 2, negative COVID-19 test or vaccination certificate required for anyone arriving. 3, your 7-day case rate per 100,000 population needs to be less than 9 on an average a day. And mask wearing should be required, especially indoors, and social distancing is required. The next level up is the blue Safer Tourism Seal. The evaluation again on self-assessment, but your destination has to have a 50% vaccination rate, and visitors have to have a negative PCR or negative COVID test before arrival, or they need to be fully vaccinated. The case rate per 100,000 population should be less than 7. Mask wearing inside should be required, and social distancing is encouraged. The red Safer Tourism Seal has a requirement of 70+% of your population being vaccinated. The 7-day average case rate should be 3 and less, and there are no further restrictions in regards to mask wearing or social distancing. So this is kind of the red Safer Tourism Seal is kind of the day before everything is back to normal. Again, if you wanted to apply for the seal, just go to safertourismseal.com. Now we're going to be going to Israel, and we're going to be talking to Dr. Peter Tarlow, who is our co-host usually, and he's joining us from the other side of the world. Please stay tuned. Thank you very much from our end, and we see you in a minute.
The entire length of the Western Wall is 1,500 feet, almost a third of a mile. Today, we only see approximately 180 feet, the Western Wall Plaza that we all know today. Where is the rest? Where did it disappear? Today, most of the Western Wall is covered by the houses of the Muslim quarter. In just a moment, we're going to enter the Western Wall tunnels and uncover the rest of the Western Wall. A pilgrim ascending to the Temple Mount needs to purify himself beforehand. And so, anyone coming to Jerusalem has to bathe in a ritual bath. In Hebrew, a mikveh. Maybe Jesus himself bathed in one of these mikvahs. After walking a few seconds in the tunnels, we've reached the Western Wall. I'm standing near the largest stone found in the Western Wall. Its length is over 40 feet long. That is longer than a bus. Its height, almost 12 feet high, and its depth inside, 14 feet. How much does it weigh? Almost 600 tons. That is equivalent to 200 elephants, or to 10 tanks, or even to 2 747 jumbo jets with the people and the luggage after shopping in Israel. This large stone was carved at a quarry in the northern parts of the Temple Mount, brought down, lifted up 3 stories high, placed symmetrically. And the big question is, how? We don't know. We are standing now in the closest place a Jewish person could get to the Holy of Holies while walking along the Western Wall. This is the holiest place in the Western Wall, because perpendicular to this point, 200 feet in a straight line, is the peak of the mountain, is the foundation stone, where today the Dome of the Rock is located. So far, we've walked along the Western Wall, and now I'm touching the actual mountain, the bedrock. The Western Wall is above us. The masons chiseled the bedrock to look like the Western Wall in order to create an optical illusion of continuity. These are original, authentic tiles of the main marketplace of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. Jesus himself might have walked through this market on his way to the Temple Mount. We're approaching now the end of the tour and walking through an ancient Hasmonean aqueduct that was created 2,200 years ago. We're talking about 200 years before Christ and King Herod. We've almost reached the end of the tour. We are standing now in a pool named Sterotian. The meaning of the name is small bird, because we are now standing in one of the smallest pools in Jerusalem. 150 years ago, Captain Charles Warren arrives at this location, but he doesn't find clear water, but a surface of slime and sewage. This is the basement of the Sister Zion Monastery above us. The pool and the monastery are located not far from the Lion's Gate and at the first station of the Via Dolorosa, the station where Jesus began his last walk before the crucifixion, where the Ecce Homo arch is. Captain Charles Warren tries to cross the surface by laying down wooden planks. The sisters above us hear noise from the basement and walk down. Surprisingly, they see 2 figures floating on the water, and they get scared. They decide to block the entrance to the monastery by building this massive wall in the late 70s of the 1900s.
Aloha and shalom and good afternoon. My name is Juergen Steinmetz. I'm joining you from livestream.travel and eTurboNews in Honolulu, Hawaii. And with me, as always, is Peter Tarlow, but we're not going to talk about the weather in College Station, Texas. beautiful day in Hawaii, I know that. But Peter is actually joining us from Jerusalem in Israel. And so how's the weather in Jerusalem, Peter?
Well, actually, the weather this week has been wonderful. Even though there's been a heat wave in Europe, somehow it didn't make it quite to Israel. So the weather has been around in Celsius about 33 degrees, 34 degrees, this is July. In summer in Israel, 33, 34 degrees is really almost cool. And of course, in the evening, it goes down to maybe about 18 degrees. So you need a jacket in the evening here, which is really delightful. So the skies are blue. The sun is just coming up because it's Friday morning here. And so Shabbat Shalom to everyone. It should be a beautiful day today again. And it's been really a delightful week here.
And Peter, tell us, last week we talked and you indicated you're going on a big trip. How was your trip and what did you have to get through? It looks like it was quite an adventure and quite a procedure to fly from Constitution to Tel Aviv, wasn't it?
Yes, it's not an easy system. Israel was supposed to have open skies, which means that they make life easy in July 1st, but they changed their mind and they decided to make it on August 1st. And so getting here was really difficult. You had to take a PCR test in the United States. We flew from Houston to Newark, and then the airline insisted that we show them all sorts of new proof to get on the plane to Tel Aviv. We got here and you have to stand in line to take another PCR test. Then they take you to the hotel where they give you a blood test to make sure you really have enough antibodies in your system from either your Moderna or your Pfizer shot, which are the two that Israel recognizes. And then you're in quarantine at the hotel until you get your answers. We actually did not get the second PCR negative test until the next day, but the Ministry of Health was nice enough to let us out as we had a PCR test in the United States. And we had the blood test proving that we were with plenty of antibodies. So we got out, but then we had to still submit our other PCR tests. We're leaving, I'm taking a group of visitors, and there are very few visitors. What's really ironic is that people kind of stop and they hear us speaking English, and they go, wow, Americans on the street. Last night, once you're in the system, life is pretty normal in Israel, but getting in, the Israelis have really made it difficult at the moment to get in. You got to prove that. Last night, I was at a new sound and light show at the City of David, not the David's Tower, which is kind of David never saw David's Tower, King David, but they've now discovered and are uncovering the entire ancient pathway and old city of David, where David actually lived, which is outside of the old city walls. And they have a new light show there. It was amazing. It was filled. The entire light show was filled, but there were only the 13 of us who were Americans, and everyone else was an Israeli. And the main language was Hebrew, of course, but they were nice enough to give earphones for people who didn't speak Hebrew. So tourism is going on here, but it's national tourism. It's not international tourism. Now, they say on August 1st, they will open to international tourism. And I understand the bookings are incredible, that every hotel is already full starting in August. It's just a question of people being allowed to come in. So it's really an interesting tourism phenomenon. The other thing is the hotels during COVID dismissed most of their staffs. And so almost every hotel is now re-hiring people. And a lot of them don't really quite know what they're doing. So you have to be very flexible until things get back to normal.
But that's pretty similar here too, because our tourism in the United States is all domestic tourism. I can tell you, even in Hawaii, we're full. Tourism is booming, but it's all domestic. You don't find any Chinese, any Koreans, any Australians, not even Canadians. And so I think this is kind of a global trend these days.
Yes, it may very well be. Certainly here, while tourism is booming, it's all domestic tourism. And the others, with a few exceptions, there are a few bubble countries where you can go between one country to the other, but they're they're hard. It's hard. So people here are looking forward to August when the government says that tourism is going to be allowed to be really reactivated again. Certainly with specific European countries that have passed Israel's very stringent laws concerning COVID, and it's taken very seriously here. If you go indoors, they stop you immediately if you don't have your mask on. So they're not fooling around. They take this as pretty serious, and you don't have to wear a mask on the street at all, but indoors you do. And they're making it, the Ministry of Health is really cracked down. So it's an interesting phenomenon. A lot of places in the United States have become very apathetic. They are not apathetic here.
Excuse me. But what if you really think Israel is a very small country, relatively small country? You know, if you really cannot compare it with the United States. So if they have big domestic tourism, it's like you can do this all in a day. You know, you can go from one end to another in one day. It's really not such a big thing. When you talk about regional tourism, what about tourism that includes Jordan, for example, or even Egypt? Is that going on?
Well, there was a lot of tourism between Jordan and Israel, and especially between the UAE and Israel. The problem is that in the UAE and Israel, tourism is now back. But in Jordan is having a very difficult time with COVID. And so not because of any fighting or people being angry or anything like that, but just because of COVID regulations. It's kind of like the United States and Canada. As soon as Jordan is able to get control of COVID, I'm sure the border will be open again. But right now the border is not open. And that's true, by the way, within a lot of the Arab countries. They are having to take care of themselves. And we saw a phenomenon that took place in Europe. We see it in Latin America, which is really suffering terribly from COVID. Again, it's a major strain. And of course, one of the big issues is this whole new Delta strain, which I think began in India. Though we are told that, I don't know the answer yet for Pfizer. I'm not sure anybody does. But Moderna, people who've been vaccinated with Moderna are told that they are okay as far as the Delta strain goes. I'm hoping that's also true for Pfizer.
I can update you because this has been going on while you were asleep this morning. Pfizer is okay.
Okay.
Itself says we're seeking emergency authorization for a special shot of Pfizer after you have the Pfizer for 6 months. It's okay, that isn't necessary, but Pfizer said it is. So that's basically the argument. In essence, Pfizer wasn't around 6 months ago, so we're still all okay. But there in a few months, that people have to actually get a booster shot on this.
Yeah. And Moderna has said you may never need a booster shot, but you will need to get a shot should there be new variants. So it's still a little bit confusing, and nobody's quite sure. Here, they're looking at the Ministry of Tourism. I think one of the interesting things about Israel is that because there's so much history here and so much took place, and you've had 7,000 years of civilization. Living in Texas, we're able to say you travel 100 miles and you've gone nowhere. Here, you go 1 mile and you've gone through 10 civilizations. So from a tourism perspective, even though it is a small country, and there's no doubt about that, there's so much tourism stuff here. And I'm leading a group of Latino leaders to Israel right now. They keep saying, we'll get to the north, we'll get to the south. And I have them working every morning. As soon as we end, I have to get dressed so we can get ready for breakfast. Other than Friday night, which of course we're going to stop because it's the Jewish Sabbath. And we're going to someone's home for dinner, and we're taking the synagogue. But every day we have started at very early at 8 o'clock in the morning. We finish at 11 o'clock at night, and we've maybe done 1/10 of what there is to see in Jerusalem. So Jerusalem, just Jerusalem, is a fantastic city. You almost need 2 full weeks just to see Jerusalem. And that tells you a lot. One of the interesting things that happened here is that on the first night, we had just gotten out of quarantine, and the waiter said to me, there are some US congressmen who are here. So in typical, almost Israeli nerve chutzpah, I said, oh, maybe the congressman would like to meet us. We're voters. And sure enough, they did. So the congressman came over. One of them was Congressman Meeks, who's from New York, and he's the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. He just became that for in the House of Representatives. And we had a wonderful discussion between leaders of the Latino community and the American congressman about the Middle East, about foreign policy. So it was really a special experience. I think everyone really enjoyed it tremendously. And those are some of the types of experiences that you get across Israel and certainly in the city of Jerusalem, where one way or the other, everybody gets here. And according to both Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, I don't know Muslim, I may be wrong on that one. It's certainly Jewish law. This is the center of the world, and everything is measured from Jerusalem. So wherever you are in the world, you know how far you are by knowing how far you are from Jerusalem. You, for example, are at the other end of the world.
Yes, I'm certainly from Hawaii. And but it looks like you have a wonderful time. Now, with all the tourists, how Jerusalem is such a vibrant city and
Yes.
such an international city. Do you see any changes? Are they obvious or?
Yeah, you do. They're really working on upgrading the city during the COVID period. There's a green belt now that's all over the place and lots of flowers. You don't see any garbage. One of the things I think the whole COVID a positive is, many years ago when you would come to Jerusalem, lots of people were smoking, and now you don't see anybody smoking. Maybe because they can't smoke because of a mask, or the whole COVID thing stopped the smoking issue. So you don't see that. The city, you don't see much garbage. The city is really clean, and that's a positive. And again, because of domestic visitation and tourism, the restaurants and hotels are full, but it's full because of locals coming to Jerusalem and not international. We're starting to see it though, and they expect a huge, huge influx starting in August. So we'll see if that's true or not. Of course, this is the Middle East, and all predictions, you only know the prediction is right after it's happened, because things change here by the moment.
Now,
and of course, we have a new government here, and the tourism minister takes great pride. He was on the Israeli judo team, and they say he's the best looking tourism minister as a male in the world. So but he's in great shape. He's an instructor for judo, and he became the tourism minister. So I guess this is going to be really health tourism we're going to have now.
Well, that's a good thing, I guess.
Yes, it is. But the guy's really in great shape. So
how is outbound tourism? I know that's on and off, and Israel opened up to the Gulf region, specifically to the UAE, and there was a lot of tourism traffic between the two countries. Is this still going on, or did it all come to?
It is going on. The problem is not so much outbound. The problem is when you want to come home. The government said a few days ago that Israel, of course, they cannot stop an Israeli from coming. If you have an Israeli passport, they have to let you in. But they're demanding that even Israelis go home and stay in quarantine until they get government clearance. So it is a little bit of a hassle because you have to be prepared. But the airport was full. So it was mainly Israelis at Tel Aviv, but you did not feel like you were in an empty airport. It was bustling and full and busy. You just didn't see a lot of foreigners. But that may change. There's a lot of outbound tourism also to certain European countries that are in the bubble, and other places that have been cleared. There is a debate going on. There was a lot of people who went to Moscow, into Russia, and they're having a big COVID wave right now. And so there's a whole issue of should Moscow be right now not permitted until Moscow gets past this COVID wave. In Moscow, you're not allowed, like in Germany for a while, you cannot go into a restaurant until you have a quick COVID test in order to be able to enter. So they take your temperature, but they're having a very difficult time in Russia right now with COVID.
Yeah, and of course there is an enormous percentage of the population in Israel speaks Russian.
Yes, it's you see lots of signs in Russian. Normally, there's a huge Russian tourism here because so many people do speak Russian, and the Russians like coming here because they have lots of vodka in Israel. Lots of signs are in Russian, so if you only speak Russian, lots of people can help you. And most of the international signage is in, of course, it's in Hebrew, but then in English and in Russian. Those are the two most common signs you see. And the Russians are very comfortable being here. So they have they like this, and of course it's warm. And there's lots of sun. And in Moscow, in the winter especially, you don't have a lot of sun.
No, absolutely. And Peter, how long are you going to be staying in Israel?
Well, we'll be leaving on Monday night at 11 o'clock. So we'll be back in the United States on Tuesday. And by Wednesday, we'll be able to do our program again. So I'm going to wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom, which is in Israel, as you know, the country closes down on the Jewish Sabbath. I think you once learned that you can't get a cappuccino here Friday night to Saturday night. I think it was a cappuccino, you told me.
It's even worse. I know.
Yes, of course. So, but it's so active here. Most people support this concept because they really need a break. And people are really exhausted by the time you get to Friday night. And so it's really nice for the country to take a breath, and the streets are quiet, and you see people walking in families together, and people walk in the middle of the street even. There are cars. It would be a mistake to say they're not cars, but traffic is down tremendously. And it's kind of like a quiet day that belongs to God. So people, I think, enjoy the idea of Sabbath. Even my Christian friends go, this is great. We just love it. So maybe in the United States, we need to have a little bit of quiet again, because I think life is really intense in the United States right now, and you just are afraid to turn on the news. So it was interesting. The people who are with me, who I brought here, said, it's nice to take a break. And I guess that's what tourism is all about, giving you the opportunity to take a break and refresh and begin again. So we might think of tourism as a giant Sabbath.
Yes, and it's also a giant business, but
yeah, so we might call it the business of the Sabbath. Anyway, I'm going to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I'm holding an iPad, so my hands are getting a little bit tired. And this is really nice to be able to broadcast from Jerusalem. If I could figure out some place where I could get Wi-Fi outside, I will. Maybe we'll try it again, and I'll try to take someplace where it's a little more interesting than right from here. But I wish you all well. Have a great time. I'll speak to you when I get home in the United States.
All right. Thanks, Peter. Enjoy your time.
Thank you. Bye.